got here
magnetic compass, fins, got steering gyro compass, and pilot right now making it turn. Our speedometer, all the gauges and alarm, rudder, device known as a piece of glass that spins as soon as off by centrifugal force. And this is just control for steering and different areas where we. And there's my buoy. I'm going to head up into Buzzards Bay.
Anything of interest, we're going to head about 20. Don't feel confident there's going to be
patrol like this. What are we doing away when you said interesting?
for fishing boats primarily. Of course, we spend most of our time in looking for fish. Craft that we might check compliance with the rules or regulations. Don't find anything on this side to the canal. There'll be plenty over there. Pretty large fishing that works docks. And after that, we'll probably pull on, let the crew rest. Do the same thing again tomorrow morning.
Now, say, for instance, during that inspection, you got a call for search and rescue out in July. What would happen?
Well, we search and rescue take precedence over our mission. There's another boat out there now that would not be having to go. During this week, law enforcement patrol, which is now very likely we're going to be called out on 2 or 3 cases. So what we do is we maintain ourselves in a good geographic position to respond to the search and rescue cases that come up. And in the meantime, while we're waiting, we conduct fisheries boardings and law enforcement boardings primarily. We look for drugs, but primarily during this time of the year with the fishing fleet, we're looking for compliance with fishing rules and regulations.
Now, for instance, if you had gotten called to a search and rescue and the guys were on that fishing boat, would they have been?
Yeah, we would have. Were you expecting everybody to go in and off of New Jersey about and it was less than 30 minutes. Tugboat on fire. These boats, when they're always ready to go, and unless we're at home, perhaps an hour, we're always patrol.
How do they do a normal patrol?
Well, the duty at the mission on a patrol like job as law enforcement comes up, we respond. Stand by our only heightened readiness status. Our search and rescue. Times so that they put us in down where you're down for maintenance. You know, we got out. We just recently, of course, one of the other missions for the hearing. We just came a week ago.
We you down at the oil salon?
Yes, a week in the harbor there, and bit to clean up. We were there in Creek, Virginia, and it took us to boats right there off.
Going under the bridges should
Cam, you just want to head.
See something. Really? 10-foot pleasure craft. Yeah, I don't know. Quite a bit tough. He was good. I don't think so.
device.
We'll just go when we go through.
Our radar. Okay, we just. Hi guys. Hey. John, you've been in this area before. Hey, Bill, look, man. Yep. Down the port, starboard side.
Shot from the BB right at
Now, I've got a bad piece on the. Yeah, we had a couple of them. Big ones. What's that in front of me there, boats? They're two white objects that they had. Yeah, I'm still coming right.
30 foot right. 4 days now. You know, has gotten speed is you got which is to the north.
Yeah.
You also got number 8, which is all fast. No, lights are different. That's all. I was gonna ask that.
Think that's on the cap.
Nah, all furled up. And he's motor pretty good. Motor pretty good.
I don't know, where did the captain take off to? I mean, I'm more past him already.
Yeah. Another sail behind him.
Will plot contacts for you and show either true or relative vectors right on the scope here for you. The nice thing about it is it's got a function called trial. Instead of you manually putting in a course or a speed change, you can just put it in trial, and then you can change the input, change your course, change your speed, and then that'll change your heading, and it'll change all the vectors, all the contacts you have designated, so that you can see what would be your best course or course and speed change to avoid contacts within the rules.
So there's certain ships.
They're just like the stop sign, the guy in the anything to the right. Unless I have.
Should be 5 on.
Right.
45.
Why don't you tell us your name, your rank, how
Okay.
long you've been in the Coast Guard?
My name's Steve Fine. I've been in the Coast Guard 6 years this October. I'm a gunner's mate 3rd class on board here. Basic mission on this boat here, for what I do is on the gunner's mate. I take care of all the small arms and machine guns on board, and all the LE equipment, law enforcement boarding equipment. I hold on all board all small arms training.
Okay, when you boarded the fishing boats this morning, what was the basic, thrust behind that?
Assure compliance with all federal regulations. Basically, mesh size. Sure we're using small mesh, and other regulations that they had the proper PFDs on board, firefighting equipment, not excessive fuel or oil in the bilge, and proper documentation, licensing.
What are some of the other things you've been involved with over the years in the Coast Guard? Can you remember any one or two?
As far as myself, I was on the Cutter Bib out of New Bedford. We received 2 drug busts down the Caribbean, and then from there I was out in California on a Coast Guard Cutter Morgenthau, involved in the fishery patrols in Alaska with the joint service, American and Japanese and Korean. Basically doing the same thing with fisheries up there, making sure the Japanese weren't taking more than what they were supposed to.
Okay. Have you been to any of the 200th anniversary celebrations at all?
No, I haven't. I haven't been able to make any of them yet. From what I understand, the final celebration is going to be held in Fall River, Mass. next year. Hopefully we'll be there for that one.
Okay. And what's the Coast Guard motto?
Semper Paratus, always ready.
And always ready?
Always ready, yeah.
Very good.
You want me to go over it? Is that the guy you mean, or the kid that was that you were talking to there? Oh, that guy. Okay.
Where you guys heading from here?
I think we're headed out to George's Banks. Well, we're going to go out to P-Town,
You're all set.
and I think we're going to anchor there for the night, but from there we're going out to George's Banks to do more fishery patrols like we did this morning.
Well, we're gonna get some. Are you guys going to part your short? Hey, Mike. You're the guy? That's kind of high priced, isn't it?
Hey, only the best for the Monomoy, you know?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
How you doing, Mike Mark? How you doing? Good.
Cross the boys. Cross doors. What do you think? I saw you put makeup on it this morning. How well?
It took a little doing because I had to
Like the wedding.
pull the handles all the way out.
No, it's not until spring.
I
Springtime.
had to pull the handle, take the handles off.
been
So I
made.
had to take all the
I
guts
know,
off
she's
and
got
slide
plenty
it
of
out
time to get
and
nervous
them off.
there.
That was-
Get that on film?
Mm-hmm.
Small boat cut right in front of them.
They went on a couple of boats and we were able to shoot the small boat going out to them. Then they took us out on a boat. And
Fishing
took us to some stuff, yeah. They were pulling nets up.
Oh,
great. What's the
double
sport?
baited together,
Tar
got our
Mike's
license
putting the
for
fish
2
together.
weeks apart.
Just on the Coast Guard?
Yeah, just on the
Philly
rig.
Oh, I see. I see.
Get a variety of different
Like
stuff.
October
Hey, what's the motto of the Coast Guard?
Always ready so that others may live.
So I think I got my license.
There you go.
Shut that thing off. Semper Per.
The United States Coast Guard, on an average day, saves 16 lives, one life every 91 minutes, works 23 oil and hazardous chemical spills, investigates 17 marine casualties, seizes 3,568 pounds of marijuana and 35 pounds of cocaine. This multi-mission service is a merger of 5 federal agencies with a history that dates back to the beginning of the Republic. It began on August 4th, 1790, when, at the request of Secretary of the Treasury Alexander Hamilton, the first Congress authorized the construction of 10 revenue cutters. Their job was to stop smuggling and help collect the tariffs. These taxes were the new nation's principal source of income. The early revenue cutter sailors not only met the challenge of collecting tariffs, they battled pirates and privateers, enforced quarantine laws, and attempted to stop slave importation. As the country grew, larger, more heavily armed cutters were needed. They were built just in time to fight in the nation's first war under the Constitution, the Quasi-War with France in 1797. This war, which was fought in part to protect American trade, marked the beginning of the Coast Guard's proud military heritage. Revenue cutter sailors once again defended the nation's rights at sea in the War of 1812, when they went after British privateers. One of the most notorious was the Dart, which had seized nearly 30 American merchant ships before being captured by the cutter Vigilant. "50 years later, the revenue cutter Harriet Lane opened the Civil War's naval conflict when it fired the first maritime shot at the steamship Nashville as it entered Charleston Harbor. In the Spanish-American War in 1898, America quickly secured Cuba's independence from Spain. A revenue cutter rescue in Cardenas Bay, Cuba, was one of the most dramatic incidents of the war. While under fire from shore, the cutter Hudson rushed to the aid of the damaged Navy torpedo boat Winslow and towed it to safety. Revenue cutters did more than fight wars during the 1800s. They continued the battle against piracy and tariff resistance. In 1831, local merchants in Charleston, South Carolina, refused to pay the federal sugar tax. This was one of the many early struggles between the states and the federal government. Revenue cutters enforced federal authority by escorting merchant ships to the customs agents. By the mid-19th century, increased trade and immigration called for additional maritime safety services. These services would eventually merge into the Coast Guard. Federal life-saving stations were first authorized in 1848 under the newly formed Life-Saving Service. Daring surfmen carried out countless legendary rescues. In 1896, the life-saving crew at Pea Island rescued the passengers and crew from the schooner E.S. Newman by swimming to the wrecked ship with a line and pulling each person to shore. The Steamboat Inspection Service and the Bureau of Navigation were also formed in the 1800s after a series of disastrous boiler explosions and other accidents. The Coast Guard's regulatory duties developed from these organizations. Safety was also the key mission of the U.S. Lighthouse Service. Lighthouse keepers have guided ships into the nation's harbors since colonial times, and many have put their lives in peril to save others. Perhaps the most famous was a Rhode Island woman named Idawala Zarada Lewis. During her more than 40 years as keeper of Lime Rock Light in the 19th century, she saved at least 18 lives and became a national celebrity. The Coast Guard has protected the environment for more than 160 years. In Alaska, they enforced early fisheries and game laws, and in 1890, Captain Mike Healy of the revenue cutter Bear supplemented the food supply of the Native Americans by transporting reindeer to the new territory. For years, cutters were the primary federal presence in Alaska and the major source of maritime search and rescue. The sinking of the Titanic led to yet another Coast Guard mission in the northern latitudes, the International Ice Patrol. Today, Coast Guard aircraft still patrol the busy, fog-shrouded, ice-laden waters between the United States and the British Isles. The modern Coast Guard began in 1915 when the Revenue Cutter Service and the Life-Saving Service merged and took the name United States Coast Guard. 2 years later, the newly formed Coast Guard entered World War I. Its men suffered the highest proportion of casualties of all U.S. armed forces as they carried out their main mission of convoying merchant ships between Gibraltar and Great Britain. At war's end, there was little rest for battle-tested Coast Guardsmen. During Prohibition, they fought the rum runners in a sometimes deadly cat-and-mouse game. The Coast Guard underwent its greatest expansion during World War II, growing from 8,000 men to 240,000 men and women, the vast majority of whom were reservists. They played a vital role in North Atlantic convoy duty and amphibious warfare. They landed soldiers and Marines on the beaches during every major amphibious assault. At Guadalcanal, Signalman First Class Douglas Munro led the rescue of a company of Marines about to be overrun by the Japanese. He died after maneuvering his boat between the enemy and the evacuating Marines. For his actions, Munro was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. During the war, Coast Guardsmen also guided ships and bombers across the ocean with Loran electronic navigation stations. This wartime system has evolved into an important navigational aid. Prior to World War II, the Coast Guard was a merger of the Revenue Cutter Service and the Life-Saving Service. By the end of the war, the Bureau of Navigation and Steamboat Inspection and the Lighthouse Service had joined the Coast Guard. The service was now truly a multi-missioned organization. Ocean patrols were a major mission after the war. Cutters rescued ships and planes in distress and provided vital weather information. On the Great Lakes and on the rivers, Coast Guardsmen broke ice, set buoys, and helped with flood relief. Ice operations expanded. In 1957, the cutters Storis, Bramble, and Spar crunched through the Northwest Passage to prove that ships building the distant early warning line could escape to the east. In the Vietnam War, Coast Guardsmen once again were fighting on distant shores. With naval ships and Coast Guard cutters patrolling, a small wooden sampan had only a 10% chance of getting through. A steel-hulled trawler had no chance at all. During the 70s, a series of oil tanker disasters led to an expansion of the Coast Guard's marine safety mission. Coast Guard pollution strike teams have been deployed to hundreds of oil and chemical spill sites. The ship inspection and pollution monitoring programs were also greatly increased. The 80s opened with a non-stop search and rescue case, the Cuban boat lift. More than 125,000 Cubans jammed into boats and fled Cuba for the United States. Also in 1980, while a fire raged on the cruise ship Prinsendam, the Coast Guard and others pulled more than 500 survivors from crowded lifeboats in the cold Alaskan Gulf. Not one life was lost. The Coast Guard Auxiliary plays a vital role in today's safety mission. These volunteers patrol regattas, teach boating safety courses, and even provide security for the space shuttle. The Coast Guard began as a law enforcement agency, and today is still at it. Enforcing fisheries laws in northern waters, stopping illegal immigration in southern waters, and battling drug smuggling around the country. In the war against drugs, the Coast Guard has intercepted thousands of tons of marijuana and cocaine. Through its daily efforts on the world's oceans and the nation's rivers and lakes, today's multi-missioned Coast Guard continues its 200-year tradition of maritime safety, military readiness, and law enforcement at home and abroad.
Lighthouse maintenance, national defense, the list goes on and on. The United States Coast Guard and its 40,000 men and women are truly charged with an exciting yet hazardous mission. For 200 years, they've lived by the order, you have to go out, but you don't have to come back. Danger is an everyday occurrence, and yet the men and women of the Coast Guard are always prepared and ready to answer the call. Last paragraph again. For 200 years, they've lived by the order, you have to go out, but you don't have to come back. Danger is an everyday occurrence. Danger is an everyday occurrence, and yet the men and women of the United States Coast Guard are always prepared and ready to answer the call. Semper Paratus. And we're going to take two again on the Coast Guard script. Throughout 1990, the United States Coast Guard celebrates its 200th anniversary. 200 years of saving lives, preventing accidents, protecting our coastlines and waterways, fighting drug wars, cleaning up pollution and oil spills, and providing hope to those hurt or lost at sea. Having trouble with the S's. S. Again. Throughout 1990, the United States Coast Guard celebrates its 200th anniversary. 200 years of saving lives, preventing accidents, protecting our coastlines and waterways, fighting drug wars, cleaning up pollution and oil spills, and providing hope to those hurt or lost at sea. Today's Coast Guard is a multi-missioned organization resulting from the merger of 5 federal agencies through the years. Much credit goes to Alexander Hamilton, dating back to 1790, when he urged Congress to fund the construction of 10 revenue cutters. The idea behind the revenue cutter service was to stop smuggling and help fight piracy on the high seas, as well as collect tariffs due the U.S. Treasury. Having an awful time with the S's. Take 100. Throughout 1990, the United States Coast Guard celebrates its 200th anniversary. 200 years of saving lives, preventing accidents, protecting our coastlines and waterways, fighting drug wars, cleaning up pollution and oil spills, cleaning up oil and pollution spills, screwing up my S's. Take 101. Throughout 1990, the United States Coast Guard celebrates its 200th anniversary. 200 years of saving lives,
preventing accidents, protecting our coastlines and waterways, fighting drug wars, cleaning up pollution and oil spills, and providing hope to those hurt or lost at sea. Today's Coast Guard is a multi-missioned organization resulting from the merger of 5 federal agencies through the years. Much credit goes to Alexander Hamilton, dating back to 1790. Much credit goes to Alexander Hamilton. Again. Much credit goes to Alexander Hamilton, dating back to 1790, when he urged Congress to fund the construction of 10 revenue cutters. The idea behind the Revenue Cutter Service was to stop smuggling, fight piracy on the high seas, and collect tariffs due the United States Treasury. Meanwhile, the U.S. Lighthouse Service was born and provided a beacon of hope to the maritime industry. These architectural beauties lent a guiding hand to fishermen and merchants. These architectural beauties lent a guiding hand to fishermen and merchants struggling at sea and have saved countless lives over the past 2 centuries. One decorated lighthouse keeper, Ida Lewis, is said to have saved at least 18 lives from her lighthouse station on the coast of Rhode Island. Her memory is still celebrated each year in this stylish New England port city of Newport, Rhode Island on Ida Lewis Day. The Revenue Cutter Service also assisted in national defense efforts, fighting in every war since 1797. The United States Coast Guard, as we know it today, has landed a vessel in every amphibious battle the United States has encountered. In 1848, the federal government formed 3 new services: the United States Steamboat Inspection, the Bureau of Navigation, and the United States Life-Saving Service. To help, one more time that paragraph. In 1848, the federal government formed 3 new services: the U.S. Steamboat Inspection, the Bureau of Navigation, and U.S. Life-Saving Services to help deal with an onslaught of boiler explosions and marine accidents. Thus, there were 5 separate services dealing with maritime safety: the Revenue Cutter Service, the Lighthouse Service, Steamboat Inspection, the Bureau of Navigation, and the Life-Saving Service. In 1915, the Revenue Cutter and Life-Saving agencies merged to form the United States Coast Guard. The sinking of the Titanic led to a new mission for the Coast Guard, the International Ice Patrol. The Coast Guard played vital roles in both World War I and World War II, and combined with the other agencies during World War II to form the new, highly talented Coast Guard. Today's United States Coast Guard forms the world's 12th largest Today's United States Coast Guard forms the world's 12th largest multi-mission navy, and on an average day saves 16 lives, works 23 oil and hazardous chemical spills, investigates 17 marine casualties, and seizes 3,568 pounds of marijuana and 35 pounds of cocaine. Its mission continues to expand. Its mission continues to expand. Its mission continues to expand. Today's Coast Guard continues growing with the times. Computers, advanced weaponry, life-saving apparatus, environmental protection, firefighting, law enforcement, and maritime safety are all elements of its everyday mission. Together with today's voluntary Coast Guard auxiliary, the Coast Guard men and women face a daily challenge. I'm going to say that one again. Together with today's Coast Guard auxiliary, Coast Guard men and women face a daily challenge to provide a maritime safety net, ensure military readiness, and enforce federal laws both at home and abroad. Together with Together with the Coast Guard Auxiliary, today's Coast Guard men and women face a daily challenge to provide a maritime safety net, ensure military readiness, and enforce federal laws both at home and abroad. Today, environmental concerns are a worldwide issue. Today, environmental concerns are a worldwide issue. With the Alaskan oil spill from Exxon's tanker Valdez and the World Prodigy spill off the coast of Rhode Island making national headlines, the Coast Guard has been at the forefront of environmental protection. Oil spills and hazardous chemical cleanup, firefighting, life-saving, search and rescue, accident prevention, navigational inspection, drug law.
Found fire today, several kinds.
They've lived by the order, you have to go out, but you don't have to come back. Men and women of the Coast Guard are always prepared and ready to answer the call. Danger is an everyday experience, and yet the men and women of the United States Coast Guard are always prepared and ready to answer the call. Siempre parados. Danger is an everyday occurrence. Danger is an everyday occurrence, and yet the men and women of the United States Coast Guard are always prepared and ready to answer the call. Sempre parados. I hope we got it there, Doctor.
Thanks also to the City of Newburyport, the Yankee Homecoming Days Committee, the Customs House Maritime United States Coast Guard. Today the Coast Guard begins its 200th year of service to America, and I'd like to take a few moments to talk about the meaning of our service and on how we've changed and not changed in 2 centuries. Where the revenue cutter service literally got underway almost 200 years ago. Our roots are the law enforcement duties assigned to these first cutters by the first Congress. The smuggling, fisheries, and other federal laws we enforce at sea today are important to a modern America. Today, the Coast Guard's